She had always thought she could wound me with words, casual cruelty veiled as humor. But the moment she called me a broken vet, in front of her friends, everything changed. I had returned from deployment, carrying more than medals, carrying scars, visible and invisible, and a patience honed over years of strategy and endurance. I had endured missions, explosions, betrayal by allies, but I hadn't expected my own wife to launch a verbal assault in our living room, flanked by her smug friends, all sipping wine and nodding as if her words were a clever joke. It wasn't the first time she belittled me, but the timing was impeccable, her laughter echoing, her voice sharp, her friends' eyes wide with fascination and silent judgment. "You really are a broken vet," she said, smirking. "Poor thing, trying to keep up with normal life after everything. It's sad." I felt my jaw tighten, but I didn't speak. Anger alone is amateurish, strategy is lethal. I smiled faintly, concealing the storm brewing beneath. She had given me a trigger, and I intended to respond with precision. I left the room that night, not to fight but to observe. Her friends lingered, chatting about novels and life, oblivious to the calculus I was performing. By morning, I had begun my quiet investigation. She was meticulous online, always careful with her social media, especially her book club photos, which were tagged, filtered, and staged to show sophistication, friendship, and intellect. But I had learned over deployments that even the most careful masks have cracks. I started by archiving everything publicly available: Facebook posts, Instagram stories, Pinterest boards. I cross-referenced dates, locations, and backgrounds. Subtle inconsistencies jumped out. A restaurant she claimed was local in Boston appeared in a geotagged photo from New York. A friend in one picture she insisted she hadn't seen in months appeared twice on the same day in 2 different states. Each small slip was a thread I could pull. Next came the private angle. I accessed her cloud storage, careful, methodical, leaving no trace. And there they were, candid book club photos she had intended for close friends only. Not just the group shots, but the intimate behind-the-scenes moments. Her whispering to someone across the table, glancing flirtatiously at her phone, sneaking wine when the hostess wasn't looking, laughing at jokes that weren't meant for me. Each image contradicted the wholesome narrative she had cultivated publicly. I didn't rush. Patience was my ally. I studied her social media patterns, the times she posted, the filters she used, the captions designed to present herself as virtuous, cultured, and caring. Every post had a purpose: approval, admiration, validation. Every photo I found privately shattered that facade. I compiled a dossier, careful, chronological, with side-by-side comparisons of her public persona versus her private behavior. Then came the outreach. Not to me first, but to her network. I contacted people she had not invited to her curated book club circle, subtly hinting that she wasn't entirely honest about the nature of her gatherings. Messages went to colleagues, acquaintances, and even distant friends, with screenshots from her private collection showing her behaving in ways she would never admit publicly. Each message was carefully phrased, neutral, factual, without embellishment, allowing the evidence to speak for itself. Within days, the repercussions were immediate. Her social media posts saw fewer likes, fewer comments. Invitations she expected to be automatic were quietly rescinded. A friend from her inner circle asked why she hadn't been truthful about certain photos, and suddenly, whispers began to replace admiration. I watched as her carefully curated image began to crumble. The woman who had mocked me, confident in her social superiority, now faced subtle social isolation. I never confronted her directly at first. I didn't need to. The proof, once public, acted as the vector of her undoing. She sent frantic texts, pleading with me to stop, to delete the posts, to retract the screenshots I had shared. I remained silent. Every time she called, I let it go to voicemail, letting the echoes of her own words, broken vet, linger longer in her mind than they ever had in mine. Silence is the loudest weapon, and it cut deeper than any shout. The next book club meeting she hosted was empty in key places. Friends who had once smiled approvingly at her curated persona now lingered on the edges, exchanging glances and subtle gestures of disapproval. Some didn't show at all. The whispers traveled faster than she could control. Accusations of manipulation, questions about authenticity, suspicions about who she really was behind the smiling photos. She was no longer the queen of cultivated charm. She was a figure under scrutiny, her social standing destabilized. When she finally confronted me, her voice trembling and accusatory, I leaned back calmly in my chair. "You mocked my service. You belittled my struggles, I said, keeping my tone flat. I returned the favor, not with lies, not with cruelty, but with clarity. People now see the truth about who you are, just as you've always seen the truth about me as broken. Tears streamed down her face, not for me, but for the social credibility she had lost, the friendships that now felt uncertain, the admiration she had taken for granted. This is unfair, she whispered. You had no right. I had every right, I said. You chose to weaponize your words. You chose to undermine me in front of friends. I chose to show people the reality. That's all. The weeks that followed were quiet but decisive. Her public image, once polished and untouchable, had small fractures that never fully healed. Invitations dried up. Comments on her posts were minimal and cautious. Friends she had relied on for affirmation drifted subtly away. She existed in a liminal space between former admiration and present scrutiny, a social outcast of her own making. I, on the other hand, rebuilt quietly. No one knew the full scale of what I had done, only that she had changed, and they respected my dignity in the process. Her laughter, once sharp and cutting, no longer reached me. I had transformed humiliation into strategy, cruelty into methodical exposure, and in doing so, reclaimed the power she had assumed she could wield effortlessly. She had called me a broken vet, intending to wound, to belittle, to assert control. I responded with patience, intelligence, and meticulous planning. By the time the dust settled, she had lost the social pedestal she so treasured, and I had regained my peace, not through revenge for pleasure, but through the quiet satisfaction of justice rendered with precision. In the end, the lesson was simple. Words are weapons, but strategy is unstoppable. And she, the woman who had mocked me, learned too late that underestimating a veteran's patience is the gravest mistake one can make.